No, I think that's the better setup.
I think you're right.
I don't know. I could never read. Is this like the salty shorthand?
It's 4 letters. INTO.
Intro.
Actually, it's into, but I left out the R.
There is a what is this? A fine line when doing a podcast with a director.
Oh yeah, it's ugly.
It's ugly at the end because we're going to sit down. We're going to have notes. All right, which honestly was always a great part of theater.
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're doing up there. I mean, you think you know. You think you're like, oh, I look good. I'm performing.
Right.
I'm standing in the right spot. I'm engaging the audience. But no, you don't know. You don't know. The director sees it.
So, School of Rock.
The movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Jack Black.
Yeah.
So at one point in the movie, Jack Black tells the guitar protege, he's the kid's amazing, right? And he's just over there and he's just kind of, and he's just playing. And Jack Black says, "Man, listen up a little bit." And he's like, "I'm playing what you told me." And he says, "Yeah, you're playing the notes, but you're not feeling the music."
Ooh.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
And that's what a director does. Is a director says you can say all the recited lines and you can hit your spots, but it's the director's job to get you to feel the music.
I think there are different kinds of directors, though. A lot of directors I've worked with were very technical. So it was like technical notes, like you're standing in the wrong place or you're not in the light, or
maybe they felt you were feeling the music. Maybe you were emoting what you were supposed to.
I'm an emotional. I've been told that I process information through the lobby of emotion.
Oh my God. That sounds like a chapter in a textbook about something you can't teach.
It's
from
one of those
a textbook.
cultural things, culture.
Yeah.
It was like a business culture thing, But anyway, no, I think I always enjoyed theater. I really did. I enjoyed the work. I think if I could go back in time, my biggest Achilles heel with theater was I was always so tall. I just would overshadow. I mean, talk about upstaging people.
Sure.
It was just like
You just can't walk in a crowd scene at 6'5".
it's like no. It's like you couldn't even walk in like. I mean, even being on stage, you're like, there's like,
right.
It's like the Tower of Tommy out there, but
no one needs that level.
But I really enjoyed it. I remember I was thinking about this, like even as a kid in middle school when I was first exposed to theater, very first show, Christmas Carol. So it's always been my favorite Christmas story.
So you weren't Tiny Tim, obviously.
I was one of the Cratchit kids. So I was in the play, but I didn't have any lines.
Nice.
But I was young. I was like 11, or something like that. But after that, like my hangout it was down the street from my house. Literally, it was like 2 blocks down the street. I could walk to the theater, and they always had kids programming, so we could go and hang out there. But sometimes they were working,
sure,
and we were supposed to come help. But after about 20 minutes of that, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go play. But theater for me was like something I really, really wanted to be into. Even like in high school, I was like, man, I wish I could be in theater, but because I was a basketball player, I didn't have the time. I didn't have it wasn't like I had to pick,
And that's a sad state of affairs. Kids should not have to choose between one or the other. And as a coach and a director,
mm-hmm.
you want to instill in your athletes. You want to say, you need to be committed. You need to be committed to cross country. You need to be committed to wrestling. You need to be committed to track and field. You need to be committed to swimming, basketball, whatever it is. You need to be committed. Don't worry about that other stuff because this is the one that's going to. We tell all of our athletes. So when I started my career and I was a coach and a director, and I was like, I was able to say, okay, I'll work with you. Let me get these wrestlers on stage. Let me get these football players on stage. Let me get these.
It helps.
Absolutely. And when you can get kids that exposure and that experience, and I wish I had a nickel for every kid that said, man, I wish I would have done this before. Because you always want to get the BMC on, the big man on campus, on stage, whether it's a walk on
mm-hmm.
or whether it's a role of sorts. And then other kids are like, oh, that's great. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, this is really cool. And hopefully they can do it in college. Other than golf and road races, because they have age brackets, theater is one of those things that you can do for life.
Yes.
Anywhere you go, there's community theater,
Yeah.
and you can do it for that. And whether you don't get a role but you can help with sets or costumes or makeup or whatever, So
that's why I brought some of my old scripts for some set deck here.
Oh yeah, I like it.
Comic Potential was.
I like the bourbon too.
I was actually the lead in Charlie's Aunt. Moon Over Buffalo was the assistant director, which is just I think they just.
That means you get coffee.
It just means like you get to be a part of the company, but you don't really have any responsibilities or any importance at all.
So I always changed mine. In every program I ever did,
Yeah.
I never had an assistant director. I had assistant to the director.
Oh, that's better.
Unless I let the kid do
better.
directing. If I'd say, okay, you can do this scene, then they would get to be called assistant director.
I wrote notes. The director
well,
would
then
look at you,
then that's
he would look at you and go, and you'd write that down, and we would go over that later. That was pretty much my primary job for that particular show.
yeah.
But back to the sports thing. Did you watch the Final Four last night?
I did not. I watched WrestleMania last night.
Oh, was that last night too?
Yeah, it's last night
I heard
tonight.
that so was awesome because The Rock came back.
Rock's 52 years old, and he's lost a little step. Because it's ring savvy.
Yeah, of
it's
course.
been 8 years, But oh my gosh, he looked great. Yeah. He looks so good. He's he's fit, and it was a fun match. It was about an hour long, and it was a really fun match. I like sports entertainment because I was in the sports world and the entertainment world.
That's where you live.
There it is. But it was a lot of fun. It was a good event. The Hall of Fame was yesterday, and there was a really nice tribute to Muhammad Ali. Heyman, I don't know if you're from ECW, he did a really fun. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was a whole weekend's worth of events, and it culminates tonight.
I followed professional wrestling. Professional wrestling. I followed.
It is. That's you don't have to do
No, you
quotes.
get paid. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what it
Well,
is.
I followed that up until the mid 2000s. I think.
Okay, so you got through the Attitude Era.
I think I got when John Cena became big. I was like,
Okay.
I kind of like, I got to, well, I really was big at it, watching it when I was a kid.
Sure, with
Hulk
Stone
Hogan.
Cold.
No.
Oh, before that, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. And then it sort of kind of died out a little bit when Sergeant Slaughter and like Yokozuna were there. But then I kind of came back and watched it when Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart became big, and then Stone Cold, and then Rock, and then there was the Monday Night Wars, and we watched that
The
through
Attitude Era
college,
is what they call it.
Yeah. And we had fun with all that. And I actually went to my first Raw, like live wrestling event. I think it was like 02 or something, which was really cool. It was in Atlanta. It was really cool to see the show
Nice.
outside of the broadcast.
Sure.
Which is very different. But I mean, I always loved wrestling growing up. Just here lately, I just stopped following it, And
We're the same way.
it's like I don't hate it. If it's on, I'll go, oh, that's really fun. It's always fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's just fun, And I think, Vince McMahon created something that was just unreal. It was just like, how do you make this a show? How do you get, and he did. It was big. It was fun to watch as a kid. But so when I, it's really interesting because wrestling is really conducive to this comic book world. You go to a Comic-Con, they're going to have wrestlers there, so you can go meet your favorite wrestlers.
Right.
And the AEW kids are just as popular as going to see Sergeant Slaughter, because a lot of these old school WWE guys are old. Some of them wheel in there.
Sure.
But it's something I would definitely feel like I probably know a little bit more about it than most people when I think about it, but not so much that I am an uber, not like comic books,
Well, let me give you a couple things that you could watch on the tube.
we go back and watch the old stuff.
Well, no. You're derailing me.
I'll do that a lot. So you better hold on tight.
I'm good because I can shut you down. I taught for
I know you
30
do.
years. There's a show called Rivals, and it's amazing. And it's WWE Rivals, and it's
Okay.
all put out by the WWE Nation because they're massive. But anyway, it's in it, and it'll talk about a lot of those guys. Like it'll talk about the
that
Bret
on
Hart,
Peacock?
Shawn McMichaels. I don't get Peacock because I'm out in the country. I just have a satellite dish. It's on. I get it off of like Discovery Channel or A&E or something like that.
Yeah, they own all that.
So
There's actually a WWE channel on Peacock.
Right. Well, that's where it is. And then there's also the WWE biographies.
I love those.
And the one on Sergeant Slaughter is amazing. It's amazing.
Didn't it just come out?
Yes. It's
I've
this
heard.
That one, and then the one, do you remember Scott Hall?
Yeah.
Razor Ramon.
Ramon.
It'll make you cry.
Oh,
I was in tears. It was the saddest damn story you've ever seen in your life. It was awful. It was awful. I was calling my nephew going, my God, I can't believe I'm watching this thing. It's just so sad because I love the guy, but he was a tortured soul. He killed a guy.
Really?
With a gun. He was a bouncer at a bar.
Is this before or after?
Before.
Okay.
And he was just getting in, and the guy, it was a booby bar, and he threw him out, and the guy started fighting with him, and the guy pulled a gun out, and he got the gun away from him and shot him point blank in the head, and so he had a lot of blowback gray matter on his face, and he was tortured by that for years, and he spoke about it on a couple of interviews that they put in, and of course he died horribly during COVID. He fell and broke his hip and laid there, couldn't move. He laid there for 3 days till his daughter found him. Took him to the hospital. Oh, man. He recovered long enough for a lot of people to come to his funeral, and then he passed when everybody got into town. But I'm getting chills thinking about it. But he was probably, and I've watched all those biographies, probably the most loved wrestler out of all of them. Mm-hmm. Stephanie McMahon said that the WWE spent more money on him for rehab than they have all other wrestlers combined. At one point, Hulk Hogan was in tears talking about him. Hunter Helmsley was in tears talking about it. All these big, huge, larger-than-life guys were sobbing talking about Scott Hall, and what DDP had helped him.
Yeah, with the yoga and stuff.
With the yoga, I mean, there was just during the time when he was helping Jake Roberts. They both called Scott and said, basically get your ass over here and we're going to help you, and they did, but he just he recovered enough to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then it was just
such a tough life. I mean, you're in the spotlight and it's like amazing, but when you fought, like Dino Bravo had that same. I mean, he fell out of the WWE, he went to I think he was muscle for the Canadian Mafia or something like that. I think he ended it. His life ended very tragically.
There's a lot. Many of them have ended tragically. Sergeant Slaughter's one of those that's got a happy story.
Saw him up in Lexington last month.
He looks good still.
He looks like the nicest guy.
And he is the nicest guy. And that's the funny, he never was in the service.
And the ladies that run the Comic-Con in Lexington say he smells great. I was like, what am I going to do? Walk up to Sergeant Slaughter and go,
let me sniff you, Sarge.
You do smell good. What is that, high karate?
Yeah. He used to buy it by the keg.
I just thought that was an interesting comment. But, I mean, there were some other wrestlers there. They had the American Gladiators there, too, which was interesting.
Nice.
But he was standing up on the side of his table, and just anybody that he was very, very cordial. Yeah. And he played the heel so well during his time. And when he played the babyface, he was great at that, too. My first exposure to Sergeant Slaughter was G.I. Joe.
Absolutely, you probably have that stuff in here.
Maybe, yeah.
He owned a lot of rights to that. He talks a lot about that. His wife, the mother of his children, ended up divorcing him, and neither of them went their way because these guys are on the road 300 days a year, right? Mm-hmm. And he was the best at it. And when he made the heel turn, it was during the Iranian-Iraq crisis, a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East, and he went ahead and they superimposed his picture with Saddam Hussein, and they did stuff. And
Desert Storm time, that's when it was.
Exactly, in the early 2000s. And so he got a lot of heat, publicity that he loved because it sent his marketable value up. But personally, his children were getting death threats. His wife was getting death threats. They had full-time security, all this stuff. So they divorced and maintained a friendship, a lot like The Rock and his first wife. We'll talk about that in a minute.
They're business partners, aren't they?
More than that, she runs everything that has Dwayne Johnson involved, and they were married, but they've become best friends and have stayed best friends. And she's just a financial and a business mogul. I mean, she's amazing. But anyway, Sergeant Slaughter the story ends with he and his wife get back together after all those years. His kids grow up. He and his wife.
I'll have to check that one.
He and his wife they're back together, and they're back to being best friends and just have this wonderful life now in retirement. And it's just kind of cool. And he can still walk. Yes, a lot of them can't.
They have back problems, knee problems, hip problems.
All the above.
Most of those back problems, but yeah. His line was pretty full the whole time at the show up there in Lexington.
I could see that.
Yeah,
I could see that.
And the people that run the show, the con, had nothing but nice things to say about him. They don't often say nice things about a lot of celebrities that come in there, and usually the ones that are like probably it's like their star isn't as high as it. Maybe it was high for like 5, but they think, oh, I'm so and so. I should have all this. It's just crazy with those.
What's that? What they say is never meet your hero. You'll always be disappointed.
That is true a lot. I should say. I shouldn't say it's always true, but it's true a lot. I met some cool people, famous ones.
Me too.
I met Mick Jagger.
You did?
Yeah.
Nice.
He was very nice. Of course, I wasn't a Rolling Stones fan, so I wasn't like.
Right.
I'm trying to think of somebody that I was like, oh man.
See, I met Daryl LaMonica.
Yeah.
You don't know who that is?
I have no idea.
Daryl LaMonica was the Mad Bomber. He was the quarterback I used to, for the Raiders, but he was the quarterback I watched growing up, and I met him and we interviewed him on the other podcast that I used to do, and I'm retired from there, so I do guest spots on it. So, but anyway, we did an interview, and it was a childhood childhood sports hero. And he was, just like you're saying, super nice. We just talked and we laughed. We ended up talking more about fishing than we did about football. And then, of course, he died like 6 months later. But
I don't get starstruck much. I don't know
either.
There's like people I'm going to go, I've got to meet that person. And I've never been like one to feel that way about people. I just think it's kind of weird. But I've met like Star Trek actors. One time I did kind of get starstruck. I was working at F.A.O. Schwartz.
Nice.
And
were you really?
Yeah, in New York on Fifth Avenue. Of course, a lot of celebrities came in there. A lot. I mean, Michael Jackson all the way down. I mean, there was tons of people. But I remember I was working in this one department upstairs, and I saw Jonathan Frakes, who plays Commander Riker on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Nice.
Walked in, and he had like a Hawaiian shirt type thing on it, and I remember like literally doing this. I was like, he recognized that I recognized him, but I didn't want to go Commander Riker.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember his real name, and I was like, but I remember him just being like, and then he goes, "How you doing?" He just walked off, and I just went.
That
was one
so
of the few times ever I've been starstruck, and I've met, like I said, Mick Jagger and Adam Sandler, and it's like some A-list stars, and it's just like never. But it's always Star Trek people for some reason. Matt and I we went to Huntsville last year specifically wanted to get William Shatner's autograph.
Oh, nice.
There's not going to be a lot more opportunities.
No.
And we were like, all right, we know we're going to have to pay for this more than we really want to. And we got in line, and of course he goes, you hand him your picture, because you got this little process.
Sure.
You pay, they give you a picture, and you hand him a picture, and he goes, it's like Joe Biden just signed something for us. But it was like, oh, that was William Shatner.
Excuse me.
So it's just funny how these, when you meet these famous people. But yeah. I wouldn't know a sports person like today, because when I was younger, I followed a lot. I knew a lot of basketball players, NBA,
right.
Knew all the NBA players, a lot of college players, even a lot of NFL players in Major League Baseball. But like, I just sort of kind of stopped watching it religiously. Like, we watch sports in the shop.
Uh-huh.
I don't know who's playing half the time. It's like, player wise, like,
sure.
I don't follow. I was thinking about this again, back to the Final Four last night. I was watching the first game. I think I fell asleep before the second game started, or during the second game, so I don't even know who won. But I watched. It was who was the first game last night? It was NC State and Purdue.
And Purdue, Purdue won, right?
Purdue did win.
Purdue
They got
won.
that 7'4" kid.
Yeah, the center. And
Yeah.
they just dump it to him, and he just draws
I see
fouls.
him. I can see he's all height in some
Okay.
ways, but when you got 7'4", I was like,
Yeah, but doesn't he have this amazing free throw percentage?
I think so.
I read.
He's
something
not
like that.
terrible. Don't get me wrong. I guarded a kid when I was in college that was 7'3", legit 7'3".
I've never met anybody that tall.
I'm
Is it
6'7".
Yeah.
He was 7'3". I couldn't do like
What could you do?
nothing. Like they would just throw it over my head. I'm like, and he would catch it, turn around, shoot a layup, and I'd look at the coach. I don't know what you want me to do, man. Like this guy's like a whole head and shoulders taller than me. But my point was, watching the show, I was like, I had two thoughts. I was like, man, I just don't care because I don't care about the team. I mean, if this team wins, awesome. If this team doesn't, but you find little moments like NC State had the heavyset kid that was in the Elite Eight and he was doing some good stuff. And you're like, oh man, I want that kid to do well, But I don't care if the team wins because I'm not bought. Even Kentucky, who's my team, I just don't care anymore because I don't have an emotional investment in the players or the school or anything anymore. So it's just like, if they're on, I'll watch them. My mom, though, I'm afraid she's going to have a stroke watching Kentucky basketball. And I'm just like, no, just calm down. It's not that serious. The other thing I noticed was watching the sports, this is something I was going to bring up a minute ago, there's a kid that was on NC State. And I was watching him. I said, this kid's literally going to shoot this team out of the game. Because he would just take it down. He would shoot. Whether he was open or not, he would shoot the ball. And it got me thinking, I was like, I wish to God I had the mentality when I played sports to operate in that fashion. Because for me, it was, if I shot a shot like that, I was out, like instantly. So I developed the mentality of playing basketball with this mentality of, I'm playing the game to not be taken out.
Right, and that is pervasive because in sports, being a Raiders fan with 20 some odd years of losing records, we always get a lead and then we blow it, and it's because there's a phrase that says we're playing not to lose. Instead of piling on and going for it and keeping the pedal to the metal, we play not to lose. So I'm totally aware of that. I've seen it in wrestling a million times.
I carried that for so long. It was like my last year of sports, and I was like, I'm just gonna have fun with this. Like it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Not the end. It wasn't the end of the world. Like if you didn't, but it's a confidence thing. It's like you're gonna go out there and like know you're gonna hit this shot. If you think like you're not gonna hit it, like everyone's like, oh, if this goes in, you're gonna miss it. Well, 90% of the time, you're going to miss it.
Tiger Woods says that he always forgets about the last shot when he approaches the ball in the next shot. You can't worry about that one.
That's what I had to do. I was like, you've got to develop this mentality of like they said on Ted Lasso, you got to be a goldfish.
Yeah. Exactly, with the 3-second memory.
Yeah.
I hate the words. I hate the word that you used when you said fun. I don't think sports. I don't think as coaches we should punch fun, the same as directors, the same as orchestra leaders, the same as band directors, the same as. Was that your favorite teacher in your math class? Why was that your favorite teacher over here? Whatever. Oh, you made it funny. There's a difference. We're mistaking the word fun. Mm-hmm. Playing tag with your little brother is fun. Shooting your nephew, and I know your nephew, with those Nerf guns over there. Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah.
But sports should be enjoyable. Class should be enjoyable. Yeah. If you're enjoying yourself, if you're getting a dopamine release because you're like, oh man, that was awesome. I did good. Even though we lost, I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed the competition. That's what I enjoyed about being a director. Even in some sports when I coached wrestling, practices were great because they were so intense and they weren't fun, but they were enjoyable, and you got that got that dopamine,
and that comes from the work.
Sure,
and like I think that's why I enjoy theater more, because whether I had a good performance or not, I enjoyed it.
I liked the hype, and I liked all the stress, and I liked all the elements that went into putting a show together and the fired up about right before the show goes on. But my favorite parts was as a director was creating the show, making those pictures, seeing the kids go from just a raw kid with a script to developing this character. And the rehearsal process is so much.
I was always blown away because I would get a script, right, and like you get this is your lines, and you see your schedule for the week. This is what we're rehearsing. It's like we're gonna do the first part of Act 1. We're gonna do the second part of Act 1, and then you do that until you get to go. Okay, you're gonna be off book for Act 1, but Act 2 you can still call a line, whatever. And I always thought to myself, how in the hell is this thing going to come together? Like it just was like this.
It's called theater magic.
It just like it would just magically, and all of a sudden it's like, and it was just a seamless production because you didn't do it. It wasn't like you rehearsed the whole show all at once.
And you don't always rehearse sequentially.
Not at all.
You may go. You may do the end. You may start with the end first, and then
that's all dependent on schedules.
Absolutely.
But I more than basketball, I love the work in theater,
and
I love rehearsals.
And I'm glad to hear you say that because I did too. In educational theater, and I think, and I believe this as a coach, in educational sports, anything that you can consider extracurricular, the process is so much more important than the product. We want to have a good product, There's a local football team that's not far from here that has lost 28 of their last 30 games. Anyway, it's hard for the coaches for them to say to these kids, the process is more important than the product because winning is a product. But in all reality, sports teaches so much more than just W's and L's. And the same thing with you may have a crap crowd. The crowd on opening night is your friends and your family, and everybody's fired up, and it's Thursday, and blah blah blah, and everybody's going crazy, and no matter what you do, it's great. And then Sunday's crowd is my wife and the rest of the blue hairs in the community. They don't guffaw and they don't wah.
Yeah, the Sunday matinee was always the.
It's a very. But they're just as happy.
Yeah, of course.
They're just as fired up, So.
And then I think that translates to, it's like, that's why, you're on when the crowd's into it. That's the great thing about theater.
Oh, you get the vibe, the feedback.
And like, I think that's why, and today's cinema, Matt and I argue this stuff all the time, but I talk about this in the comic show because everybody's all like, oh, Marvel this. Did you see this Marvel show? I'm like, I don't watch Marvel shows.
I don't watch any of them.
Because I think it's dead because what made the MCU as popular as it is, or was the actors. The actors brought so much to the show. Not case say they were the end all be all, but it made a huge thing. It's like when your favorite character dies off in a show, like Walking Dead. When Rick left the show, it's like I didn't care anymore. I had nothing to be invested in, And it's like I remember I watched The Last Kingdom. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. Mm-hmm. It's on Netflix. It's about the great Viking army that at that time when King Alfred was king and stuff like that in England. But it revolves around this character Uhtred. And it follows historically a lot. So a lot of the characters, they're going to die off because historically that's when they died. And I think it went 5 seasons and they did a movie. And then after season 3, it just wasn't the same for me because Alfred was gone. He was the antagonist of the whole thing. So, and he brought so much to the table. And there was these other characters that all of a sudden weren't there, even though the main character was still there, but there was characters that left. And I'm just like, and I think that's what I dig about stories is like, you got to follow this character and be excited about the character. And I love that about theater because it's right there in your face.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, one good thing about theater is like a play is written and an actor portrays that character very differently depending on which show you go see,
Absolutely.
And it's always fun for me to go see, I love this show. Like I think I went and saw Moon Over Buffalo at a different place too, just to see how it was done differently, the show. A little audio technical difference. There we go. It's coming out. So you can push that in there, salted. Wiggle that.
Go ahead.
It's but I just love seeing different variations of those theater shows. Musicals aren't really my thing sometimes.
Okay.
I like some.
Yeah.
There's some I'm like, I'm not really. If it's been a movie, musicals kill me. I can't do it in a movie. Stage, I get it because sometimes there's an orchestra.
Right.
And there's sometimes there's a lot. There's more of a
An ambiance.
Yeah, like that, because they put something to the set, and you're like, oh,
Right.
wow, how did they do this? You know, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if they break out into song in a movie, I'm like, this ain't it. Like, that's what the Marvels did. The Marvels is the new movie in Disney. Oh, my gosh. It wasn't even the worst Marvel movie I've seen. It was the worst movie I've ever seen. I was like, it's bad.
So I have an issue with a lot of the Marvel stuff.
I'm interested.
I'm not a huge fan of CGI.
Okay.
I have a series of movies that are my favorites by genre. You know, The Wizard of Oz is my favorite movie for family entertainment. You know, probably the one that it scared me, then it delighted me, then I got intrigued about it. Coming from 1939, the first movie to go from black and white to color. I mean, there's just so much cool stuff about it, right? All those scenes were done without the help of computer. The tornado scene was done with a chicken wire muslin wrapped piece that they spun and filmed. They dropped a matchbook built house to look like Dorothy's house, and then they flipped the old 32 millimeter film upside down and had it shown backwards. So much of that stuff. Citizen Kane, same year, 1939.
God, you and Matt are going to get along great.
I mean, the you know that singular shot that goes through. You see his house, and then it goes through, and it blasts through the window, and then when he's in bed saying Rosebud, you know, it's the first time that's ever gone from one into another, and then and they did so much things with the stuff that Hitchcock did, for in both television and so much of that stuff is it's skin, it's flesh and blood, it's people, it's talent, it's I want to create this. One of my favorite horror genre is Silence of the Lambs. And that was the actors. That was Jodie Foster. That was, Clarice. It was Anthony Hopkins. I mean, you don't get any better than that.
Chianti.
Yeah. I ate his liver with some fava beans and then I Chianti. Psycho was
Suspense.
With Hitch. That was just, I mean, so, and it's not all the older movies per se. I mean, because, Silence of the Lambs is only 20 years old, but
no, it's not. It's like
is it older
30.
Than, oh my God. Is it really?
You missed a decade.
Okay, so I missed a decade. My point is,
where were you in the 90s?
Yeah. What was I doing? The point is that that's why I don't like CGI, because I think it was one of the Lord of the Rings trilogy things that I watched with my grandson, and you had the trolls crawling underneath the bridge, and you had and then there was this big war scene. And it was a clash of this army and this army, and it was all computer generated, and I'm like, I could have played a video game and done that.
You talking about Clash of the Titans?
No, that in the Lord of the Rings. I don't know if it was the Hobbit. I don't know if it was Schmog. I don't know which one it was. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
That give me a little bit of CGI. Give me Gollum, which is fun. I like what they did with when they made the hobbits shorter and then the dwarfs even a little bit shorter.
Now that was movie magic.
And that's what I'm saying.
That part was.
That kind of stuff is good. But when you get into all this, I mean, I didn't like Black Panther. I didn't. I was one
a lot of CGI on that.
That's what I'm saying. I watched it with my grandson, and I think that was the last superhero movie I watched because I was like, man, give me Christopher Reeves and Superman.
Well, we were listening to in the shop here this past week. Somehow we got off on this show tunes. I think Joey put in the Masters of the Universe theme song, and all of a sudden it just played out all these like theme songs from films. And we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden, like, you're not paying attention to the song music. You're doing something, and all of a sudden, like, something will pop up, and you hear the Superman theme song.
Yeah.
Come on. And it was like, I said, what an epic song! Like, this song, it makes you really want to stand up and go.
Absolutely.
And Joey goes, this is a kind of an interesting question. He goes, because Batman was our thing. For me and Joey as friends, as kids, like, we were like all about Batman
right.
at that time. But before that, Superman was the man in DC Comics. Before '89, really, it wasn't.
Right.
Batman is kind of running the franchise now, but before that, it was all Superman. But he said, "Do you like the Batman theme song from '89, or do you like the Superman theme song better?" Because like, you know, one is a sort of a nostalgic thing. The other one's like, all right. I said, if I gotta be honest, man, I know we're Batman guys, but I think Superman. I said, for one, Superman makes me want to be a superhero.
Right.
2, it's John Williams. You know, so and John Williams has brought so much to cinema. Brought so much.
Yeah.
Matt, are you chomping at the bit to talk back there?
It's funny you would bring this conversation up because I put up a Facebook post a few days ago, and I said hot take coming, ... Jurassic Park might be John Williams's finest work. Discuss.
Oh. Well, why is that? Why do you say that? Well, I'm
because of the variation of themes. If you really listen to all the Jurassic Park soundtrack and you go through the different themes through that, they are so rich. They are so different, but they're telling all such a different story. Williams is very good with different themes as he moves through his stories anyways, but I just think there's another level, another gear in the Jurassic Park soundtrack. I don't know. Just what I thought.
All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll come right back. And we're back. I think that's why we were saying that, Matt, was because John Williams is just so creatively different than Danny Elfman. You know, and Danny Elfman does a lot of work with Tim Burton, and he creates that aesthetic that Tim Burton has visually. He brings to it, you know, from an audio standpoint. Because he does, I think he did Beetlejuice. I think he did Scissorhands. And I think he did pretty much all of it. I mean, a great deal of his work.
A great deal of his stuff, yeah.
I don't think I'm wrong about that. But Danny Elfman, yeah, you can pick up these guys. You know, Howard Shore. You know what his stuff sounds like. You know, trying to think of some of the other great composers off the top of my head there. I know that Elfman was always one. John Williams is like the GOAT. You know, Hans Zimmer.
So, what's your issue with CGI?
I think it's like having a drone shot in a commercial video. It's cool, but it can get overplayed.
Absolutely.
I think there's a place for CGI. I think there's a place for action scenes. I think there's a place for drone shots. You know, I think it's because just because you have the technology doesn't mean you have to put it into every element of your story.
I love The Mask.
With Jim Carrey?
With Jim Carrey.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And so much of that was, you know, when he becomes the cartoon, you know, I mean, just that kind of stuff it's fun, but it's not the whole freaking movie.
Like,
you know,
Roger Rabbit was like that, you know. There have been some, I think.
I mean, but you know that going in.
Yeah.
You know, but
Lucas really ran off with that, and everybody wanted to kind of emulate it back in the early 2000s. And that definitely made big budget projects go a lot further, but
right.
Until it didn't, you know. I think it's like anything, you focus so much on the technology or this little moment of like action sequences are a very common thing that really disrupts storytelling, or it's not motivating the story. You know what I mean? It's not a motivated, like when Luke fights Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, that's a motivated fight. You know, it's like there's an emotion tied to it. There's sort of, it follows the flow of the story. But with some of these like John Wick movies, like, don't get me wrong, John Wick's cool. The first one was really cool. The further they go on, it's even like it's like Fast and the Furious. It's like it's just overkill.
We're on Fast and Furious 26 or something.
I know, it's like painting flames on the space shuttle, man. It's just it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know? That's kind of my biggest thing with CGI. So I think it gets overdone. I loved the Lord of the Rings films. I thought it was cool. You know, there was this epic environment that they created, and which they couldn't have really done in a lot of ways because, I mean, you're not going to build.
Did you read the book?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's the thing. Those of us that read the book, we felt nostalgic when we watched the movies. My wife loves the movies, but she's not a theater snob, you know, like I am. She's not. You know, we talked about people on stage versus watching a movie, and that's my thing. Is if it provides more jobs for people in our art form, as opposed to just people sitting behind a desk creating this stuff on a computer. And I know that maybe the art form has evolved into that, but I guess I'm a purist.
We've surpassed the whole Marvel comic. I think we're going to get out of comic books, driving the cinematic world.
Good.
And now you're going to start seeing video games, because there's like a lot of video game TV shows and films coming out that are all like, oh, they're doing Borderlands, they're doing Halo now. You know, it's like all these things that were in the last 20 years have been video games are now going to be. Now some of them aren't great because they weren't great stories to begin with. They were just fun games to play. But I think that's kind of where it's going to shift to, is you're going to start seeing video game cinema.
Wasn't Tron a video? I remember playing that
so this is something Matt and I talk about a lot, is Tron. The first Tron is brilliant. You know, it was way ahead of its time.
Movie?
The film, yeah.
Okay, but wasn't that based on a video game? And I think
Matt, was it based on a video game, or did they come out simultaneously to kind of like a Disney? Wasn't it a Disney thing am I wrong about that? Where it was to promote something?
I remember that the Tron machine.
I was really young when that came out. I remember seeing the Tron machine.
It was right next to the Ms. Pac-Man machine at in the break room at my work.
Yeah.
And that was 80,
81? 83, I think, 82, 83. When,
yeah.
I mean, Jeff Bridges was young, you know.
But anyway, I mean, that has...
They were still talking in BASIC back then. I mean, it was like the computer language in the film was all BASIC language.
Yeah, I think I had a C64 back then. I wish I still had it, but yeah.
I thought it was as a kid, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I went back and watched it a couple times. It's cool, you know. I think the second one could have been much better, but I think the Clue character was kind of weak. I think he was
okay.
His CGI was bad too. Like, it was real bad.
Yeah,
it was just, you know.
Well, you're gonna lose a lot of you're gonna lose a lot of people my age to go to the movies. But then again, we're not the big demographic.
What's your favorite movie?
I don't have a single favorite movie.
Oh, you said genre.
I have genres. But I mean, you know, Silence of the Lambs, which I absolutely love. I love The Wizard of Oz. I love Citizen Kane. I love anything with Bogart in it.
Yeah, Casablanca's my favorite.
You know, Casablanca. You know, I'm all over the place on that. I can't answer that with one single thing, you know. But just because I can't, you can't. It's like, what's your favorite fruit? Come on.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. I do like a lot of things for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, Matt and I are Star Trek guys. We're like one of the few people in this whole comic shop that comes in here and we're talking Star Trek.
And now, I hate Star Trek.
Well, Matt's a DS9 guy, and I'm a TNG guy. Now, Matt's not a TNG guy, but he
I don't even know what any of that
So
means.
there's like the original series that you knew as a kid.
Oh, yeah, like New
Captain
Hope?
No.
Are you talking Star Trek or
Star Trek.
Oh,
not
okay.
Star Wars.
Captain
Kirk, Mr. Spock.
Oh, yeah, no, I like Star Trek.
Okay, Star Wars is with Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. I know you're killing me. Just stop
busting your balls.
Just stop. I was going to see how long we could pull that off. I was like, you're not that stupid. You did watch Star Trek though, as a kid.
I love William Shatner.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a crush on Uhura too. So
seriously?
Oh yeah, I always thought she was hot.
So yeah, Matt's a Deep Space Nine guy.
Okay, and you know what? I enjoyed Deep Space Nine. I didn't hate it.
Well, Matt, what is it? It's the character development is much.
Oh yeah. The characters and the characters in the story. I mean, Deep Space Nine, I think, deals with character conflicts and moral questions. I think on a different level and a different plane than TNG does with it. I think it's a little bit more raw. It's a little bit more in your face than TNG does.
TNG, like the original series, still was very episodic in the sense of like most of the stories were contained to one episode.
I gotcha.
There were a few themes that translated over the course of 7 seasons, but for the most part, like each episode you could watch self-contained. I think Deep Space Nine, you have to follow the story progression.
I got you. Right.
You know, so that was one of the first ones of the Star Trek universe that did that.
But you look at the contemporaries. You look and that's where it was. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. You could tune into Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Do you know it?
I know what you're talking about. I've never seen it.
It was Star Trek underwater.
Oh yeah, okay.
And
Johnny Quest is what they called it in comics.
Johnny Quest, and with Haji and his dog
Yeah,
Bandit.
yeah.
Now you're talking Meyer,
No, we know.
Ray Spannon.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We're not ignorant to such things. But.
nice. But each episode it's fully self-contained. You could I used to teach that to my kids about monologues. You know, don't give me a piece from the middle of a conversation. Give me something that stands alone. You know, Paxton's speech in Independence Day when from this day forth, July 4th will be known as not an American holiday. You know what I'm talking about? But so that's why Star Trek, the original television series, was like that. Everything was episodic.
And I think the reason it's so iconic, if you get past the bad special effects and the bad acting, which the acting is stage actors that are trying to do a new medium, in a lot of ways, television was still relatively new, but you get these bad actors, this bad special effects, this bad fight choreography. The stories are really good. The actual scripts are really good.
The stories were fun.
And I think the same thing was true with TNG. I think they took it to a whole deeper level when it started Deep Space Nine. They tried to do it in the Next Generation a little bit towards the end because there was an overlap with those shows. But once Next Generation was off and it was just Deep Space Nine, I really think it went to a different level. And I think it just went off deep in Voyager, which I never really watched.
Okay.
Most Star Trekkers are like, that's that show.
So one of my all-time favorite SNL skits was when William Shatner was hosting. And they do him at the Comic-Con, and the guy goes, with the question, if you remember in episode 23 and about
that happens
14,
actually.
Does it really?
Oh my God, yes.
Oh my God, and he's like, you people, I don't know the answer to that. Go home, get a life.
I was at and all Star Trek actors are like this because you got guys that'll come up and just say and I've actually sat at the table with like George Takei and Walter Koenig.
Oh no, really?
And to see people come up and what they ask is unbelievable what people will ask you. But I remember being at one show in Atlanta, and we went to a panel which had some Enterprise actors, the show Enterprise, which was out in the early 2000s, and they were asking this guy a question like why he did something like, and it goes, I just wanted to work, man. That's what he said. We were all like, dang, what a punk. Now, some of them know. Like Frakes and the Next Gen cast, they are tight. They're really close. They're all best friends. But when they get up on a panel, they know how to play the audience.
Okay.
So they know they're going to ask these dumb questions. So they work it into what they do, and they just have so much fun with it.
Nice.
So some of them are really good at it. Then some of them are just like with Patrick Stewart, like I saw him, he doesn't really take a lot of questions. So
he doesn't?
Not much because he talks a lot. But it's like he'll give him a couple times.
But isn't he a classically trained actor though too? Right?
Shakespearean actor.
Yeah.
He was in Dune, the original Dune.
No kidding.
He was Gurney Halleck.
All right.
Yeah. I think it was the first time I ever saw him was in there.
I could see that.
And then he was Captain Picard. But he was actually Professor X longer than he was Captain Picard. I guess up until they did the Picard show. But he was that character just as long as he was Captain Picard.
Wow.
If you think about it, time-wise.
Okay.
No, yeah, he's a classically trained Shakespeare actor. Like a lot of them
are.
Robin
Williams.
I mean, if you go watch the original series, it's like they basically stole all of Shakespeare's story arcs and said,
they're so funny.
Let's make it for space. It's space Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I think that's what but I do think that's something that has gotten lost in translation as entertainment has moved forward. There has been a loss of classical literature and understanding why stories were told and the way that stuff was, the moral truth behind it.
Well, when you blur the lines, and now you're going to go off into politics, and I think that's
okay. We can do that too.
That's just a commentary on our society, is that when you blur the lines of morality that have been around for 500 years since Shakespeare penned these things, and you try to erase that, and you try to woke it out, then of course, why would I want to teach? Why would I want to teach something with a moral compass that I'm only going to get called on because we're trying to erase that part of our history? I mean, so and I know that sounds confusing, but it's just that I was listening to an interview with Miss Gabbard on the way in. Jack Carr had her on his podcast, and that's what she was saying, is that you can't believe she's from Hawaii, and you can't believe how many people go to Hawaii and don't know what the Arizona was part of, the memorial there at Pearl Harbor. Don't know that today's standards. You should ask these kids what's the big significance about 9/11 when they come in here. Of course you don't want to do that. You're conducting.
Oh, we talked about that in here. We have some,
but it's just people are.
Well, you've got kids that come in here. When I say kids, they're in their 20s. They were born after 9/11, so they don't remember life before it, and don't even have a frame of reference for it. And and that gives me a perspective shift in some ways, because they also go, "Hey, man, I appreciate what you're talking about, but I don't have that frame of reference." That's not an excuse for not learning history or understanding the importance of something. But especially when we're talking stories, like comic stories, we're like, "Man, Batman was so much better than this time period.
Right.
This is what the characters. This is what was going on." He's like, "Well, I don't know that. I know what."
Well, then effing learn it.
Well, it's like I think there's a little bit of it's interesting. This is an interesting experiment. We'll put 69, Batman 69, 66, 69, 69, Batman 66 on the show, on the screen over here, right?
66, by the way.
Yeah, 66. It was on until 69, though, right? It was 3 years.
I think so.
Batman 66, we'll put it on. And we'll put it on during the Pokemon swap, which is mostly kids in here. And it's interesting to watch. The kids will just sit and watch it. They don't know what they're talking about. But they like the aesthetic. They'll just...
It's a cartoon.
It's a live-action cartoon.
It's a commercial, yeah. And you know what's really fun about that? There's an example of absolutely outstanding actors that wanted to be part of that. Look at the lineup. Vincent Price was on that.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Gorshin was the Riddler. Cesar Romero was the Joker. Burgess Meredith,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about just tons and tons and tons. They all wanted to be part of that,
Mm-hmm.
They all wanted to have that,
It's interesting to watch that, because I don't know if you've ever gone back and watched those in a while. They do talked about some liberal concepts in those.
Absolutely,
because it was a very tumultuous time period.
Sure,
but it's done in a way that's like, it's not all up in your face and like, hey, you got to. Yeah. I think the biggest problem with today's stories are people have asked me, did you go see the new Ghostbusters? I said, yeah. Like, what'd you think? I said, it was cool. And I feel that way about most of us. They go, what did you not like about it? I said, it's got a weak villain. And if you don't have a strong antagonist, you don't have conflict. You don't have conflict, you don't have a story. You don't have anything to learn.
You have nothing.
It's like, what's the point?
I used to tell my kids when I was teaching, I'd say you have good theater has OOA. You have an objective, an obstacle, and then what we see on stage is the adjustment. So the objective and the obstacle can be stated or they can be acted out. But what gets everybody drawn in is how you're going to the protagonist or the antagonist are going to react together or separately to the adjustment, the OOA, and sometimes it would catch, But
did you ever do 12 Angry Men?
I love 12 Angry Men.
I did that one.
You did?
We called it 12 Angry Jurors because we had 6 women on the show because we didn't have enough guys to do 12.
They now have a remake of that. It's called 12 Angry Women, and then they have, of course, 12 Angry Jurors.
Sure. I did that show. I was, I forgot which number he was, but it was I think it's number 3. I was the antagonist.
Who said guilty from the beginning?
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that's one show there's no real performance. It's just all in the dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's how do you present this dialogue?
Absolutely.
It's so tough. It's so much harder, I thought, than actual physical acting, when you can move across stage, or especially if you're in a comedy. There's comedy that you can do sticks. There's things you can do to really bring the audience out. But with something like that, you're trying to create drama and suspense and just something, just conflict. If you don't have the right people in those 2 key roles, like it falls flat. There's no, what do you call it? These spikes, right?
Right.
Which is what draws us in. and brings in and
makes you laugh, makes you cry, makes you laugh, makes you cry.
And then it evokes that emotion, and the emotion, invokes you to make some sort of like internal decision about life, your own life, and that's that gets lost today because it's not there. It's not there and so it's just like this. It's like watching like Matt don't watch. I can't hardly talk to Matt about movies unless they came out 30 years ago because he just
I'm with you, Matt.
We went and saw Dune, which was cool. I thought the first one was better than the second part. And if you read those stories, I don't know if you've read those books, but man, they go off in the deep end.
Yeah.
Oh man, it goes way out there. Yeah.
Had to get paid by the page, the writer. Yeah.
I'm not a fan, not against those books, because I always thought they were kind of a neat concept, but the whole thing's about the dangers of blindly following a religious leader.
I loved when those kinds of things, and you look at a lot of, we touched on Shakespeare for a second, from 500
which
years
we should
ago.
touch on probably more often because it's a good.
You got to have perspective as to what was going on in the day. So
hard to wrap your head around.
When years from now, when people look at the Crucible and they realize that, okay, so the Crucible is written about the Salem witch trials. On the surface, it's written about the Salem witch trials, which happened in the 1600s. Am I getting that right? 16
the 17th century.
1600s. But it was set it was written in the 50s about the 1700s, what was going on in America with the communist scare. And it was all about the Red Scare of the 50s, McCarthyism.
Yeah.
And so that's going to, for down the road, that concept is so hard for people to realize that Arthur Miller, the husband of Marilyn Monroe, who was blacklisted, not Joe DiMaggio, but before she was boinking the Kennedys, he wrote this story about the scare of communism because he was blacklisted, and a lot like you're saying, blindly following, cult, religion, politics, whatever, just blindly tunnel vision, and that's what people had, during the Red Scare, the post-World War II Red Scare, and set it to what could happen to a society and a people, and
what do you?
Love it
because we've dealt with a lot of that since COVID, probably even before that, probably when Trump got elected, maybe even before that, and it's been sort of a slow, but almost like, I don't know if you've ever rode the Incredible Hulk ride at Universal, but it goes real slow, and all of a sudden it shoots you out like a cannon, and then that's kind of how this whole thing has kind of happened. It's like it was sort of slow at first, and all of a sudden, boom! It's like this whole mentality of like, you think this way or you think this way. There's no like in between here. My question for you is, what do you think like it would take for people to kind of shift their perspective a little bit? Is it going to be something violent, like a war or something? Or do you think a piece of literature could have the same effect?
Well, I think
it's a big question.
It is a big question, and my wife and I we're both politically astute, and we talk about that kind of stuff a lot. And I think that when you look back at times of great patriotism, after 9/11, particularly, when George Bush said let's go to ball games, he went and threw out that first pitch at the Yankees. I think that kind of stuff will take place, and I think I think our next election is gonna further prove that I think we'll put the right person in the White House, and it'll be shades of Grover Cleveland, if anybody gets my drift on that.
I don't think anybody.
Nobody will get that.
I don't know. Did you get that, Matt? I kind of know what you're talking about.
Grover Cleveland was the only former president to stay out of term.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is...
But he wasn't very popular, right?
He was okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah.
The only reason I say that is because right now, as we look, and we talked about rock earlier, and I'll come back to that, but this is the first time in my lifetime, and I'm 65, in most everybody that's alive that's voting, that we can say, this was my presidency with President Biden. This was my presidency with President Trump. Take out COVID, which was a man-made produced thing in Wuhan, China.
Yeah.
And where were you better off? This is the first time we can actually compare that. You can't have that conversation. A conservative can't have that conversation with a liberal, because the liberals will say, just like the DA in New York has completely said, ran her whole campaign on, I will get Donald Trump. Okay. And the conservatives are saying, we need, you can mandate that I accept you, but you can't make me change who I am to accept you. And that's the problem. So we have to go to liberal supporters of President Biden can't say he has done this and this and this and this, where supporters of President Trump can say he has done this and this and this and this. Liberals will say, I just hate Trump. They're anybody but Trumpers.
It's a trigger word.
And I hate that.
I don't like that
F
either.
trigger words. Sorry, don't tell me you're triggered. You know what? Life's tough. Get a hard hat. I love that bumper sticker, But how can we say that? We can't. We are raising, and I'm a grandfather, we are raising a society of sissies. Where is the people? What do you know, Tommy, that right now when you join the military, you raise your hand. Matt, are you listening? You raise your hand to defend the Constitution. Do you know what they don't teach anymore in basic training? The Constitution. So I've raised my hand to defend the Constitution, but I don't know what's in it. What the hell is that? Talk about the blind leading the blind.
Most people don't even know who fought in, much less won the American Revolution.
Oh my God! Don't get me started. Don't get me started. For somebody that also taught history and has a degree in
this has
history.
been like 10 years ago. I said, "Do you know who won the American Revolution?" And they go, "I don't even know who fought in it." And I was like, "Why not?" And I said, "To me, that's common knowledge, right?" Yeah. But they're like, "Well, when we had history class, we just went to the gym and played kickball."
Well, and here's part. Well, that's a lot of
that's a whole other conversation. Probably for a whole other podcast. Is on the educational system.
You get. Don't even get me going there.
I want to though.
You have. You have. We can't erase our past.
No,
we can't erase. So quit trying. So quit trying to erase our past. We've all done. We've all made mistakes. So when I ask people, when I talk with them, and I go, "Well, what do you like about Joe Biden?" Tell me what you like about about President Biden. Tell me what you dislike about President Trump. And then I switch it. Tell me what you like about President Trump. Tell me what you dislike about Biden. Tell me what you dislike about Trump. Give me specifics. But they can't. I find that one side can't say to the other, here specifically. I find that people that tend to be conservative, the conservative movement is just shakes their heads at the hypocrisy of the left. How can we during the George Floyd riots say that was okay? The billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of damage. How can people like Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, go on and start a defense fund when this woman is also responsible for putting how many people in jail for smoking weed? Why is the hypocrisy of the left okay? Because the left controls the media. The left controls what we see. And then when you look at what January 6th, the real atrocity is that poor veteran that was shot. And don't get me started another podcast about the way we treat our veterans. Being a veteran, Matt's dad is a veteran.
He's a veteran.
Matt's a veteran. How can we even?
What service were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I
didn't know that, but
Yeah, we probably talked about it. I was a munitions maintenance specialist, and I got it. And I have a grand that's a CB in the Navy right now. He just got back from Norway. He said it was the coldest he's ever been in his life. But anyway, I digress. My point. It's full circle. It comes back. It's so hard to have a political conversation with somebody because people are afraid to argue. And the Greeks said that argument, a good, solid argument, is the highest form of education. It's the exchange of viewpoints. So, but don't tell me, I can't talk to you. You used an offensive word. Well, shit, I'm sorry, you know?
My brother, not the one you know, the other one, he asked me, I thought this was the most brilliant question ever. He goes, when did, and I guess he meant like people in their 20s.
Right.
Because when did they really start giving a crap about politics? Because I remember when I was in my 20s, I couldn't care less what was going on in Washington.
When I grew up in the 60s, all the young people cared about politics, but
sense.
But you had a cause.
Yeah.
You had the Vietnam War. You had the hippie movement.
Mm-hmm.
You had all that stuff that was going on. You had all that civil unrest with the civil rights movement. You know, there were some good things that came out of it, but we didn't. You had honest reporting on that. You had Walter Cronkite. You had Chet Huntley. You had David Brinkley. You had people that would tell you the news and without their editorial comment on it. When you have MSNBC now not showing any of Donald Trump's speeches because they think it's triggering, they think it's, that's bullshit. I'm sorry, you can't do that. You have a responsibility to it. You have a responsibility to your audience, and that's what they need to do. Is they need to get it. They're not journalists.
No, not the way I know what a journalist is. No, it's all opinion. There's not. Most of it's made up.
Most of it's
all
made
entertainment.
Talk
about sports entertainment.
Absolutely. Fact check some of that stuff. I don't like. My favorite is I don't like Donald Trump. He's a racist. Really? So your president, Joe Biden, who's never had a real job, who's only been in, politics for 50 years. So when he spoke at the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, when he spoke at his funeral, he's forgiven for that.
Most of these people who are all about Joe Biden don't know his political career, where he started. And, again, it's that whole frame of reference thing. They weren't born before the...
Well, you're right. And I said all that to say that they're ignorant. And that's why I'm saying, because when you go, they don't have a frame of reference. Well, you got to freaking learn, okay? That's like you got gay women for Palestine. You know what? Let me tell you something.
They don't work.
It doesn't...
They don't work there.
But they were carrying the sign in New York that said it was lesbians for free Palestine. Sorry, listen, lesbian for Palestine. Go to a Palestinian-run Palestinian. Go to an Islamic-run country like that and claim that you're a lesbian, and watch how fast you get tied to a chair and thrown off a building. They're missing the point. When you're and I'm wearing a shirt today that I got from the American Red Cross, and it's the first time I've donated blood, and I'm a multi-gallon donator every 6 weeks since I was a kid. It's the first time I've gone back. I was using blood assurance because the American Red Cross refused to condemn Hamas for the atrocities on October 7th. Okay? I think there's some things that aren't funny. I think that the Holocaust isn't funny. I think that 9/11 isn't funny. And I think that the attack on America in Pearl Harbor is not funny. I don't think terrorism in our country is hilarious. There's so many more things to laugh about. Those things are kind of, you don't laugh about the Boston Marathon. You don't laugh about the African-American children that were killed in Atlanta. You don't laugh about the Beltway shooters. And so for people when the American Red Cross, the International Red Cross, would not condemn the atrocities that Hamas committed in Israel on October 7th, I said, I'm not giving blood anymore. And then I had an epiphany. And I said, the blood that I gave in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that was used to a car accident victim in Smyrna, has nothing to do with the people that run the frickin' organization.
They
Hamas.
say.
So I had to learn. To your point about the frame of reference, yes, it pissed me off that they did that. But the same way these poor stupid kids that are saying, "Oh, they're going from the river to the sea." Do you know what that means? I've been to the Holy Land, and it means from the Jordan River. I was baptized in the Jordan River, as a matter of fact, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It was very cool. They want to wipe out Israel.
Was that a tourist thing?
I went with my church.
Okay.
And
so you guys like, hey, you're gonna get baptized? Like,
and they said anybody, and I'd been sprinkled. I was born and raised Catholic, so I'd been sprinkled.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'd never been dunked. I'd never been baptized. And they go, okay, well, we're gonna go to the Jordan River, and you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. It was very cool.
To your point, though, perspective is a huge thing. They do say that. I don't know who says this, but I've been told that your local politics affects you much more on a day-to-day basis than the United States politics. Not to say that that's not important, but very few of us actually look really close to home, because we're so distracted by all these things we see on TV, and on the internet and social media. I was never one to get into politics. I remember, my influences in that arena were I don't know how to say it, like I just social, I guess, more than anything. It's like I remember after 9/11, my thing was like I wasn't a big supporter of George Bush's administration. I thought he was an idiot. I was like, this guy can't talk, and I didn't really agree with the war. It wasn't like I wasn't. How do you say? I was not anti-troops, because it was like got to be pro-troops or you're not. If like you were against the war, you were against the troops, But I wasn't really against the troops or anything. I didn't really agree why we were over there, from a political standpoint. But that was about the extent of it. Like I never went layers into this thing and never went down. I was like, oh. So when Barack Obama came up for president, I was like, anybody but a Republican. That was my mentality. I was like, I'm going to do anybody. And it just got worse, the housing market. I blamed a lot of that on what that administration had just sort of left the Obama administration with. But then they did that whole healthcare thing, and it just got, and ever since then, it's just got progressively. So now when Donald Trump came into office, I was like, I think I was just over politics. I was like, I don't care.
Sure.
I said, I didn't really want Hillary Clinton. I said, Donald Trump, whatever. I was like, and I watched the election that night. I remember thinking, just watching him. Who's the guy that does the election thing on? I think it was on CNN. There's the guy. He's always doing it. I can't remember his name. It's not Chris Cuomo, is it? Is it Chris Cuomo?
Yeah, he was all in back then. But
yeah. So but I've never seen the news media turn on somebody so fast.
And he was a darling for the longest time.
And everybody loved him. The Apprentice, he was so big during the early 2000s.
He did a WrestleMania one time.
Oh, yeah. Like he fought Vince McMahon. Like actually beat him up. It was like you can go back and watch that. It's great. And even in the 80s, he was like the Kim Kardashian of the 80s, So I just was like, I never seen anybody turn on him. But for me, I just started a business, And for me, the Trump administration was very good because economically we prospered. Now we could get into the nuts and bolts of the economic engine, but which I don't fully understand because I'm a comic book guy and not a mathematician,
right?
Or an economics major by any means. But it on the surface for me, it just things seemed easier, things seemed better. Yeah. People were spending and blah blah blah, and it was just it was like this. There was no way they were going to let that guy get reelected. And I think the only things I liked about Donald Trump, one, his economic policies were beneficial for me as a person and as a business owner. And I liked the fact that he wasn't a part of the Washington system, the swamp up there, Here lately, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to have the mentality anybody but Biden, because I don't think the guy. First of all, he's just not. There's no way
he's not running the show.
There's no way. To me, it seems like, you're in a business where you don't really have a CEO or a president, and like all your vice presidents are sort of like run amok. And that's kind of like like the cabinet's kind of run amok up there, and people they're just doing whatever they want to do. So it's fun times for those people, I guess. It looks like a
how can you not be? How can you not? Again, it's the hypocrisy of it. The 50 shell corporations that he runs. How can you not be held accountable for that?
Because I don't think the wealthy elites are ever going to be held. That's never been the case. It's like, think about this on a small scale.
Oh no, but I don't agree with you.
I don't agree with it either. But my point is, I think people in power have the power. They're not really subject to. On the surface, they're not subject to the same laws you and I are subject to.
Correct. I'll agree. I'll give you that.
But in reality, they are. It's just that the way our government's set up, it's the people have to hold those people accountable. That's the way we're set up. But we've been so distracted, and so misinformed and miseducated, we don't realize we have that control.
How can a district attorney from the largest city in the United States run for election on the platform of I'm going to get Donald Trump? Letitia James.
They couldn't do it in Tennessee.
How is that? How is that okay? I just want to say this. I want to go on a record as saying that I predicted Donald Trump's victory probably 40 years ago.
Really?
I did. There was a man named Lee Iacocca.
Yeah.
Lee Iacocca turned Chrysler around.
Yeah.
When the United States was we bailed out New York City, and we bailed out Chrysler. And one of the things is Chrysler hired Lee Iacocca from Ford.
Right.
And they put him into place. Is he still even alive? He might be dead.
I don't think so. I can look it up.
I said at that point, the United States, the commander-in-chief, that's just one part of his job, being head of our military. But we are the legislative branch is a corporation. It's a company. We need somebody with business sense. I would vote for Lee Iacocca. And I used to tell everybody that. I was freshly out of the military back then. So we need Lee Iacocca to run this country.
That was what I wanted about Donald Trump, was that he was a business guy.
That's exactly right. And I said, take away all that other stuff. We have skin. We're all fallible. I've been divorced multiple times. We're all jackasses to some extent.
Really? How many times?
Yeah, that's for another show. If you'll have me back.
I'd love to. Yeah,
but I probably won't tell you. Anyway,
okay, fair enough.
But that's, just stop with that.
Were
Stop
you in the
with
CIA? Tell the truth.
I can't. Let me just say that witness protection is a wonderful thing. But yeah, if people talk about, Bill Clinton. Well, if you had to go home to Hillary, hell yeah, you're going to step out with Monica.
I never cared about that. I was in college. There wasn't a man on the planet that gave up.
You know what my biggest problem was? Okay, so you're doing your thing, and you got your Cohibas in the Oval Office. That's not the problem. Cohiba's a cigar. That's not the. Did you read the Star Report? Okay.
I did not. I was in college. I didn't care.
Well, he did weird things with cigars. Sure, but anyway, the point was it wasn't that. Why not just own it? Why not just because you know why? Because the elite doesn't own anything. Why did Ted Kennedy get away with Mary Jo Kopechne at Chappaquiddick? The girl. You know that story?
Yeah.
Because they don't own anything. They don't up to anything. And it's we're a forgiving nation.
Yeah.
People. Mike Tyson is the golden boy right now. Mike Tyson, because you know why? Because Mike Tyson said, I did what I did. I went to prison. I got out. I'm redeemed. I did what I did. I served my time. And people have embraced Mike Tyson. He's been in the Hangover movies. He's on everywhere you turn around. He's making $1 gazillion off of his gummies.
And that was Robert Downey Jr. too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Rob Lowe.
Yeah.
Rob Lowe got caught with a prostitute.
Well, in Hollywood.
No.
He must have went to Vegas, played a Mario Kart game.
Oh my God, yes, with that old woman.
That's pretty funny. No, you're right. That we're quick to. It is interesting how we're really quick to condemn, and it's really interesting when we do choose to forgive. You know,
we were so much better at forgiving back in the olden days. I believe that. I believe that there's, like I said, people love a redemption story. You're not old enough to remember, but I remember when Muhammad Ali was Cassius Clay, and he
boycotted the war.
He boycotted the war, and everybody turned. They turned on him. He was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then all of a sudden that kind of made people turn, and people would you could always tell someone's political affiliation by if they called him Muhammad Ali or they called him Cassius Clay. And
Mama named him Clay. I'm going to call him Clay.
Yeah. Well,
you ever seen Coming to America?
Yeah.
That's a real great bit.
So, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like, we as a people can get back to a semblance of normality, can get back to getting along better if we accept other people's differences, but we're not forced to live them out. You can be as gay as you want, or you can be as non-binary as you want, or claim to be a poodle for all I care. But when we're sitting here talking, you're a guy, and if I call you a guy and you say, I'm sorry, you've triggered me. Well, you know what? Blow it out your ass if I triggered you. I'm sorry. I really am. I'm sorry. I can't change me because you changed you.
Mm.
I
think it's a real indication of selfishness.
And it's 100% indication. And you can't you're imposing your mandates on me. Hey, free thinker, where's that coming from?
Right.
Okay, you can tell me once or tell me twice. Okay, so you want me to call you they? But have that conversation with me before we start things. Don't demand that I sign my thing with his, he, him, or
I always
don't make laws to because of 1% of the population. Whatever happened to majority rules?
So when I get a phone call from my friends who have kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to impress upon them if I call you or you call me and I'm on the other end of the phone, you need to let me know, A, you're in the car driving, B, you're on speakerphone, and C, there's a kid in the car. Because I'm going to say something 9 times out of 10 that is not kid appropriate.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, Toby's learned. He's definitely learning. He goes, you're in the car with me and Eli.
Yeah.
You're in the car with me and Krista.
He does that to me all the time too.
Because there's at least that motion picture disclaimer. This is an R-rated conversation.
Right.
But yeah, I think that does communication goes a long way.
Absolutely.
And so we could talk this stuff to death. I know. And I think we could say some for some future episodes.
Sure.
Mark Saltalamachia, and he's the legend. He's a legend out there.
In my own mind.
I think in some other people's minds too.
Yeah, maybe.
I do hope we have more these conversations.
I think so.
I think so. It's been fun. Got to wrap this out, unfortunately, because I got to open the comic book shop. But
it's about time.
We've talked for a good hour and a half. So
it was fun. It was a good time. I hope to come back. I hope we get more than tens and tens of listeners. I've got a couple ideas how we can spread the word. But
I do too.
Get out there and go Caitlin Clark is all I got to say.
Is that who you're rooting for? Is Iowa?
I'm rooting for Caitlin Clark. I went to college with her dad.
Really?
I didn't know him.
Oh.
I didn't know him, but
we
were at Simpson College together in Iowa, and he was on the basketball and the baseball team. And, I hung out with the theater geeks and some of the wrestlers. And, so, it was this little tiny Methodist college in Indianola, Iowa, and we were there at the same time.
I went to a tiny Methodist college too.
We might have had some of the same class together. I don't know. He was 2 years ahead of me. But she's just a badass. I just love old 6 foot tall, half Sicilian.
Yeah,
that's my girl right there.
Yeah, I think people are more excited about the women's championship this year than the men's. At least it seems like there's more buzz.
And their attendance, their viewing, everything else has been.
I think people want to see her succeed.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. It's just what a great kid. What a great kid. I would go watch a woman's basketball game to see her. And I've never said those words before.
And you mean that in the sweetest way possible.
No, I don't. I can't think other than boys high school soccer, I can't think of anything more boring than women's basketball.
It's slow.
Yeah. I like
it's actually more of it's more of a standard for me of what actual basketball should be because they actually run plays.
Right. You're right.
In my opinion.
You're right.
But yeah. We'll leave it on that note.
Okay.
Salty,
Sorry.
man. I'll catch you next time, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Actually, wait. I got one more thing. Hold on, don't cut up. Don't cut it, shit, man. I meant to give you this earlier. I've been carrying this around.
Is this what you've had my gift for years?
9 months. I haven't opened it. I don't even know what it looks like. I know what it looked like when I ordered it.
Okay. Yes, I carry a knife.
I was going to have a razor blade handy, but I knew you had a knife.
At least
without knowing you had a knife.
At least one. And then if I had to shoot it open, I'd have to go to the car first.
I think you can pull this thing here.
Not near as much
Work
fun.
smarter, not harder.
Yeah, but I didn't get to pull my blade. You called me one day from Atlanta and said I'm on my way up, and then
it just got.
Then something happened and you couldn't make it. Somebody got
too
hurt.
many people.
Oh my gosh! It's a charcuterie board.
Flip it.
That's from my business card.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, man.
Wow. Dude.
Isn't that cool?
Okay, so it says, since I retired, I do charcuterie. And it says across the board charcuterie. And then on the bottom right here, you can't see it says beautiful edible creations.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're good stuff. It's good
Who
stuff.
made that?
I had it made.
That's good. Well, see, and the reason that he would, what a weird thing to give somebody. Well, it's because I made him a charcuterie board,
Yeah.
and he ate it, and it was wonderful.
I just thought that'd be a good presentation.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. All right, we're going to cut on that one.
Okay, see you, bye.
All right, there you go.